gospel, God's word, other content, reaching people who can't read and write with content that they can relate with. But aside that, I'm an adjunct faculty at Ashesi teaching foundations of design and entrepreneurship. I schooled at Ashesi, GIMPA, and I have some executive education certificate from MIT on mastering design thinking. And it's exciting to do this session with you. It's a session I have dear to my heart. So I'm hoping that we are going to have a fruitful session. And then at the end, we will try and apply some of the things that we talk about in the session. So please stay with me. So what we are going to look at is the topic was designing a powerful mission moment story, or how to craft a powerful mission moment story. And I'm sure most of you know, in our setting, especially in Africa, we are an oral culture, and storytelling is started way back. I'm sure some of you remember by the fireside and how stories, were shown on TV, and how people sit by the fire, come back from the farm, and then they just share stories. And there are some things that we can learn from this. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. So today we're going to look at how simple equals success, and then what a mission moment story is, or what is a mission moment. And then we'll look at how anyone can tell that mission moment story. And we are actually going to practice that, hopefully, if there's time at the end of the session. Okay. All right. So successful organizations, what makes organizations successful? And for me, one thing that strikes successful organizations is successful organizations keep things simple as possible, from their communication to how they solve problems, to how they delve into problems, to how they define the problem. Simplicity is key, is a key trait of successful organizations. And the secret to successful organization is communication, how communication is done. And there are some questions that these successful organizations ask. What is the essence of the work that they do? How is it going to benefit the people that they interact with? And how do they communicate their value, or what they are actually doing to the people that use it, or the people that need it? So communication is at the heart of every successful organization, and not just communication, but communication that is clear and simple to understand. So communication is very key to building a powerful mission moment story. So now the question is, what do you want people to do, especially when you are telling a story? All right, what do you want people to do at the end of a story you tell? Most of the time, when we tell stories, we don't know exactly what we want the person to do, or what we want the person to do at the end of the story. We leave it hanging, and people are just lost to, okay, what next? Why am I listening to this? What can I do? And why are you telling me this story? So the question is, what do you want people to do? And that's the question you always have to ask yourself when you're crafting a story, especially preparing to tell a story to an audience that need maybe what you are doing or giving, or the value you are providing to the audience that are listening. So this question is very key. I like to show this picture a lot because it's when you look at this picture, what do you see? I'm sure you see a whole lot. Imagine yourself standing in front of these signs, and you are standing in front of it. What will be going through your mind when you're standing behind this? maybe if you can type something in the chat box, you can just give me one word that would describe. Imagine yourself standing in front of this sign, and you have to make a decision. What will be going on in your mind? If you could type it in the chat box so that we can get interactive a little bit. Okay, Eugene said confused. Great. Any other? Can I get? Yes, confused, walk away. I'm just gonna get down from the car and walk. Okay, that's Brian. Okay, great. Interesting. Yeah. So I share the same concern. Yeah, I'll be so confused. I wouldn't know what to do. And that's what normally happens. Sorry, there's something wrong with my screen. Okay. And that's what normally happens when we are telling stories, because sometimes when we tell stories, we paint this kind of picture. All right. And we leave people confused at the end of a presentation or at the end of a story that we are telling. But where and how do you let them know exactly what you want them to do? Okay, so the first question was, what do you want people to do at the end of your story? But now you're looking at where and how. Do you want people exactly to know what they should do or what you want them to do? Okay, so hopefully at the end of this session, we are going to paint a picture and not create a story that is very confusing, especially to our audience or the people that are listening to the story that we are telling. Okay. All right. So with storytelling, one key thing you should take note of is there's an easy way and a very hard way. The easy way is making things very, 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 very simple and clear without complicating the message that you are telling your audience. Because sometimes we as leaders or we as workers and people who influence other people, most of the time we want to put a lot of things, or we want to, complicate and make the story, very long and elaborate, use very difficult and eloquent, being eloquent with your vocabulary and all that. That they're all good, but one thing about storytelling is, and going the easy way, is to keep things very simple and keep things very clear so that whoever is listening to you will be able to understand. There's also the hard way. The hard way is to try to complicate or try to put a whole lot in the story that actually confuses your audience. All right, so please take notes as we go through the session. We all want to use the easy way, because the easy way will make things visible in the minds of people who are actually listening to you and make things very clear to the people that will be listening to you. Okay, so one thing you should also take note of when it comes to crafting stories or crafting a powerful mission moment is, don't make me have to work too hard to know what to do next. And that's something you always have to have at the back of your mind when you're telling a story or a mission moment story. I'll be explaining what a mission moment story is, but don't make it very difficult for your audience to have to work too hard to know what to do next. It should be very clear what your audience should do at the end of your presentation or at the end of the story that you're telling your audience or your users. Okay, so please keep this at the back of your mind. Now, the question is, what is a mission moment? We are talking about mission moment stories. But for me, how I will describe a mission moment story or a mission moment is the aha moment in the story that causes the audience to feel something. Okay, so the mission moment is that aha point in your story that causes your audience to feel something. It can be whatever feeling you want to leave them with. Okay, so that's a mission moment. And when you look at mission moment stories, they are stories that are crafted using different vocabularies or different descriptive words that will make your audience feel and want to do something at the end of the story. So that is how I would explain a mission moment. Is that part in your story that really stands out? Is that punchline in your story that stands out among the lot? Okay, that when you share that story, everybody is so glued to you. Everybody wants to listen to the story that you're sharing. Okay, so that's a mission moment in a story that you tell. Now, this is Lori's definition. So Lori is actually a fundraiser. She has been doing fundraising for a long time, and this is how she defined what a mission moment is. So she says, is any short inspirational example of how your organization or your product or whatever you are talking about is making an impact. Okay, take notes. Any short inspirational, key word inspirational, and an example of how your organization is making an impact. If it's not even an organization, a product that you're sharing about or talking about is making an impact. And one thing about a mission moment is always about a person. I'm sure all of us will know. I know we have some good storytellers on the call, and at the end, it would be great to hear from some of you. But great mission moments or great stories are about a person. So could it be a member? Could it be a donor? Could it be a client? Could it be a staff? Could it be a volunteer? Could it be a board member? Or who could it be about? So just picture this. Whatever you are presenting on or whatever you are talking about, the moment you surround it around a person, a client, it makes a whole difference, because now people can actually relate to it. And one thing you should take note of is people are actually relatable to people. All right. People can find some connection when they are hearing about a person or someone is talking about a person that they can connect with. So that's something that you should take note when it comes to mission moments in any story. Now, one thing we should all take note of, and one thing I've come to realize, is that we all think in stories. Every story or every decision we make is based on a story we tell ourselves. So, for example, I like waakye a lot in the morning. So I wake up in the morning, I go to a joint, and I see 2 waakye stands there. Now, for me to make a decision on which waakye joint I should go to, I play a lot of things in my mind. I tell myself, or I run down a story. Okay, so this waakye taste is under a tree. Maybe the person serving it is wearing gloves. There are a lot of people standing in the queue, so probably it'll be tasting good. The pricing of that place is okay. So maybe this place will be better than that place. You realize that any decision that you have to take, you have to run a story in your mind in order to make a decision. So if we don't feel something, we can't make any decision. And that is very, very important to know as storytellers, that if your audience don't feel anything, they can't make any decision. So if you're selling a product or you're talking about an organization, you want people to donate to your organization, and you're talking about your organization and people don't feel any connection or any feeling about what you're talking about, they can't decide. And we are learning that people think in stories. So storytelling is the way to go when it comes to sharing what your organization or what your product is about. Let me find, can everyone hear me, please? So that I know I'm not talking to.
Yeah, you're loud and
Yeah,
clear.
we can hear you clearly.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So that's one thing we should take note of. If people don't feel something, they can't make any decision. Now, drawing from design thinking, because I know most of us here are really, really interested in design thinking and what it is. But mission moments, one thing you should all take note of is you have to create unforgettable emotional connections. And empathy is very, very key when you're crafting a mission moment story. All right. creating unforgettable emotional connections. So whenever you're crafting a story or whenever you are talking about or developing a story to share to an audience, make sure that before the story ends, you're creating an unforgettable connection emotionally. And that can happen when your story is around a person. And whatever story that you create, you can create it around a person. And it makes a whole lot of sense when you do that. And empathy makes you do that. It helps you step into the shoes of the audience to know exactly what they are connected to so that you can touch their emotions when you're sharing your story. As in storytelling or in creating your story, sympathy creates distance. So most people, when they are telling stories, they want to sympathize with someone, or they want to sympathize with their audience, or sympathize with the person that they are talking about. But the moment you sympathize with someone, or you're talking and there's a lot of sympathy in what you're talking about, it's like you're pleading and begging people to really support. It creates a lot of distance because people don't really feel that connection. But the moment you empathize, you step into the shoes of the people, you connect, create unforgettable emotional connections with the person or the product or the organization you're talking about. People are connected and they come closer and they want to hear you more. So take note, let's run away from sympathy when we are talking about or creating our stories. So yeah, empathy is key. It creates connections. And I'm sure some of us here might not know what empathy is. Some of us know what empathy is, but just stepping into the shoes of the users. Here, stepping into the shoes of the person you are talking about, all right? And then stepping into the shoes of the audience or the people or the clients that are listening to you. Very, very key. And the moment you do that, you create connections, and people want to make a decision when they feel that connection. All right. So I want to talk about this man. He is called Ali. He is an 85-year-old man. He has 3 children and 3 grandchildren. Ali is a farmer. He grew up all his life seeing his children grow up. He took care of his children. Most of them are now grown up. Some of them are doctors. Some of them are teachers. And he took care of them using the money he got from his farming. All right. But there's a point in his life, something happened that really changed his life. He got blind throughout the years when he was growing up, and he was able to see his children, his 3 children. But unfortunately, he hasn't been able to see his 3 grandchildren. All right. So all his years, he has been able to see his children, but his 3 grandchildren, he hasn't been able to see because he got blind at a point in his life when he was growing up. So an organization actually that deals in surgeries for glaucoma and eye problem went into his community and saw this man, Ali, with his children. His children came around to visit his grandchildren. Every time he hears his grandchildren crying, shouting, mentioning his name, but he hasn't been able to see them. But this organization deals in surgeries, and they were able to, work on his eyes, do a surgery on his eye, and thanks be to that, he was able to see again. Now, he was able to see his grandchildren for the first time in his life. And even though he was blind and now he could see, there were tears just running down his eyes the first time he saw his grandchildren. And that moved everybody in the community because he really worked hard to take care of his children. Now it was time for him to see his grandchildren. He couldn't see. But because of this surgery that happened on Ali, he was able to see his 3 grandchildren for the first time. And this surgery cost $5,000, and it was donated by an organization to help rural people who have issues with their eyes. so that they can see again for the first time in a while. Sometimes not really in the first time, but in a time where, you know, maybe they couldn't see. Now the surgery happened and now they can see. So it made a whole difference in his life. And there are so many people like Ali in communities that need to see again, some of them for the first time. Now, this is a story I like to share about because this is a man. And for me, my mission moments, you can tell from the mission, the story I'm telling is about a person. He's an old man. He could have died without seeing his grandchildren. But because of this surgery, this organization that went into his community to do the surgery in his eye, now he was able to see his children and cry from the same eyes that he was blind with. And now he could see. Tears were running through his eyes because he could see his grandchildren for the first time. These stories are stories that talk a lot about the aha moment and the points in the story that causes people to feel something. Hopefully the story that I've shared might have caused you to feel something or not. It'll be great to hear from me at the end of the presentation. But I'm sure all of us here have stories or mission moments stories that we can all share that can create connections with our audience. So there's an Indian proverb that tell me a fact and I'll learn, tell me the truth and I'll believe, but tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. All right. The more people remember stories a lot. It doesn't mean facts are not important in your stories, but stories make people remember what you're talking about. So it's something you should take note as well. So there's this 7 rules of storytelling that I want to rush through, and then we will have a discussion. We'll actually test some of the things that we are talking about. And this was designed by Ignited Fundraising. It's a fundraising organization, and they came up with 7 rules when it comes to storytelling. And I'm going to run through them. So the first rule is stories should be about real people. I've already spoken about that. Stories should be about those who need something that your organization provides or something that your product provides. Okay, so it should be about real people. And the second rule is allow the person in your story to have a real name, age, and ideally speak for themselves. So some people take stories of the beneficiaries and people want to hear exactly from the beneficiaries. The work I do, the missionary work I do, we do a lot of videos because we work a lot with donors, and donors want to see what their money is doing. And we realize that the best stories are the stories that the beneficiaries or the beneficiaries are the ones telling themselves. And people are moved when they can see the person, they can hear from the person, and they can see the person and talk for themselves. So this is the second rule. Allow the person in your story to have a real name, age, and ideally speak for themselves. And there's one thing in stories, that conflict is the oxygen in every story. So the moment you are creating a story, make sure that you are creating conflict so that the audience see that they have a role to play to solve this conflict. All right. So conflict is the oxygen of every story that we develop. Rule number 3, minds wander really quickly. And I'm sure some of us know this. The moment you talk, some people in about 4 to 10 seconds, your listeners tune out. All right. So how can you grab their attention? Okay. So don't tell people what you are going to, you don't tell them you are going to tell them a story about someone. Just go ahead and tell them. Just go ahead and share your story without saying you are going to tell a story about this person. Okay. And use a lot of descriptive words, use personal names, let the person have an age that people can relate with. Rule number 4, keep your story very short. 6 words to 2 minutes works very, very well when it comes to storytelling. Rule number 5, allow your story to elicit an emotional response. Okay, so it doesn't matter what is emotion it is. but your listeners should feel something when they hear your story. Okay. And that can happen when you empathize with the audience that you're going to share your story with. Okay. So what makes a story a story? The key thing is emotional and sensory details. So before we move on, I want you to type in the chat box, share one word that describe the impact of your work, product, or service. All right. Type in the chat box. If you work in an organization, or if you work with a product, or if you work with a service or in a service, share one word in the chat box that describes the impact your work or product or service makes. I want to see some comments in the chat box. Transition, growth. Any more? Growth, accelerate, illuminating. Wow. Okay. Any more? Illuminating. So share one word to describe the impact your work or product or service makes. Support. Okay, great. Any other more? Empowerment. Okay. Anyone? Okay. All right. Catalyst. All right. Okay. Great. All right. Now, as you see all these words in the chat box, for example, let me pick Dr. Abby. She wrote support. What comes to mind when you see the word support? Anyone? You can just unmute your mic and speak for this one. So Dr. Abby wrote support. What comes to mind? What do you think she's trying to do, or what do you think her product or organization is trying to do based on the words she had just shared? Support. Okay, support, a helping hand. Okay, so she's doing something that is, giving a helping hand to someone. Okay, great. Thank you, Eugene, Papa you. Empowerment. Matthew said empowerment. What do you think? What do you think when you see the word empowerment? And those of us on the call. Okay, someone says elegance. All right, good. Okay. Interestingly, I have been using this storytelling model unknowingly for my presentation, and it works like magic. Okay. Assist groups of people to achieve their goals. All right. And okay, Eugene said support. Come to me, all you are weary and heavy laden. Okay. So it's interesting how we can, our minds wander just by these one words that we are sharing. And it's very, very, very important that we use very, very, very captivating words that can draw people to connect with what you are doing or what your organization is doing. The sixth rule is your story should have a moment that paints a picture. Every story, especially there are different people. Our audience can be oral learners. There are people who learn by listening, people who learn by pictures, people who learn in different ways. All right. But the moment you are sharing a story, even if you don't have a picture, your audience should be able to picture what you are talking about. All right. So encourage your listeners to see themselves or someone in their lives as part of the story. Okay. So your story should always paint a picture. And the last rule is the best stories are told by the person themselves. I've already spoken about this. All right. Clients telling their own stories are the most moving ways to share how your organization is making a difference. Okay. So if you are working or selling a product or making an impact, make sure that the people who are receiving that impact are talking for themselves. It's more powerful when you are using that in your storytelling. All right. So these are the 7 rules for storytelling that I wanted to talk about. So anyone can tell this story. Anyone can tell any missing moment story. Okay. One thing you should take note of is anytime you are creating a story, there should be something that is missing that your audience can feel. All right. There should be something that is missing in your story that your audience can feel. So the most powerful stories doesn't have an ending yet. Your audience should help you get that ending, if that makes sense. All right. So always your stories should not have an ending. When I say should not have an ending, it should have a point in your story where your audience have to make a decision or have to do something to bring the ending or to make the story complete. Okay. All right. So for example, people who are like this Ali story that I spoke about. All right. So for Ali's, for someone to be able to see again, people are supposed to pay $5,000 to help Ali see again. All right. So there's a moment where if that does not happen, hopefully there are so many people like Ali that might not see again. Okay. So you leave it hanging that there's no ending, that your audience can come in and make a decision and feel and make sure that your story is complete. Okay. So you're moving your audience from somewhere to a place where they can make a decision. Now to fundraisers, all right, don't leave the money on the table. Most fundraisers are afraid to ask. They tell a nice story, but they don't give an ask. All right. What does it cost to make this impact continue among the community? What does it entail? The moment you don't put that out there, your audience don't know what to do. They're like, okay, this is a bit, I feel very, oh, okay, I feel I want to do something, but you haven't given them the opportunity to do something, to create an ending to your story. So don't leave the money on the table. Always ask, all right? Always give an ask. That will help push the impact that you're talking about forward. So you always want to know what more there is to do, especially people that are listening to you. They always want to know what is there, what is more in there in your story to do to make sure that they can be involved in the impact that you are creating. All right. So that is just a brief discussion or talk on Mission Moment and what Mission Moment is and some rules to storytelling. But I want us to just share in the chat box one thing that you learned from this session. And then I'll open up for some questions. And then I want us to go into breakout rooms. I see that we are 11 people here. So I would like to have 2 breakout rooms after this part. Matthew, if you can prepare those breakout rooms for me. And then we'll go into the breakout rooms, and then we are going to practice what we just spoke about in just a few minutes, and then we'll come back. But before that, I want to hear one thing that you've learned so far from this session. Don't leave the money on the table, all right? Mission Moment. Most powerful stories don't have an ending yet, okay? Thank you. Any other? Keep the story short. Great. Good. So we have a lot of good storytellers here. Thanks for sharing. Telling a Mission Moment story is about words. Carefully choice of words makes the difference between being indifferent and interested. Wow. Thank you, Papa, you for sharing. Okay. So before we go into our breakout rooms, all right, this is what we are going to do. Because we are not a lot, ideally, I wanted 10 people per group. But we will have, since we have two teams, we're going to have maybe about 5 people in a room. And I want you, hopefully, let's do it 1 minute per story. I want you to tell a 1 minute max story to your room, to the people in your room. Make sure you have a timekeeper, and then agree on one story that you will send to the next round. So the 2 teams, we are going to hear 2 different stories that will come to the main session, and then we'll hear these two stories, and then we'll make a decision on which story really made you feel something. All right. So we want you to share authentic, helpful feedback.
I'll just wrap up and then
How the person shares a
you
story.
can send me
Right, so
an
here's where I was inspired. Here's where my mind wandered. So while the person shares, hopefully 1 minute, each person should share a mission moment story.
Yes,
and
I
then
know.
make sure that you give feedback. And your feedback should be like,
I think it's
here's
1:45.
what inspired, here's where my mind wandered.
Let's go out there.
Someone's mic is on. Can you mute, please? Thank you. All right. So we are going to go. So the first round. So when we go into it, please, you have just 1 minute, not 2 minutes. 1 minute max to share a mission moment story for each person in your group, and then choose the best story or one story that you will bring to the main session. The criteria for evaluation in your room should be that your story cause you to feel something. Does your story paint a clear picture? Is there a sense of urgency for the vision of growth? Is there a sense of urgency for someone to want to do something about what you are talking about? Okay. So Matthew, any questions first before we go into the breakout rooms? I know time is running out, but don't worry if we are not able to finish this. Let's do this in 5 minutes when we go into the breakout rooms. Matthew, do we have the breakout rooms open? Before that, is there any question?
Yes, we have the breakout rooms open. So
Okay, great. Thank you, Matthew. But before that, is there any question?
not my
question.
question.
Any question?
Okay, so can I make this
any questions before we go into the breakout rooms, or we all understand what we have to do? Just give me a yes if you understand what you have to do in the breakout room. Okay. All right. So any yes?
So I'm going to say timer and then
okay.
So I'm going.
All right. So if there are no, please, everyone should go to the breakout room.
How small you are. I don't.
Everyone, let's run through. So we pick one person. So Grace or whoever, we'll time you 1 minute to share your mission moment story. And then we will evaluate it on, does your story cause us to feel something? Does it paint a clear picture to us? And then is there a sense of urgency? So let's start with Grace.
Okay, so Donald had a new invention. He created a bamboo bicycle, and he got the chance to take it to Denmark for an exhibition. And during the exhibition, he decided to talk about how he, created, all the sketches. He had all the sketches on the table. He talked about how all the materials and tools he used in making this bamboo bicycle to, all participants of this exhibition. At the end of the exhibition, he expected to get a call to let him to seek, get an investor or something. That call didn't come. Another call came, which was like a group of guys who were interested in his invention or innovation.
20 seconds left. 20 seconds.
And so the thing is, they told him that they checked some records and realized his thing wasn't protected. And so they protected it, took it, and they were yet to market his own invention, of which he didn't know about. I don't know. But then the thing is, he didn't know much about IP, or let me say intellectual property.
Okay.
And so
time up. Sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah. But thanks. Any feedback for Grace on her story? Sorry, the time is short, but what do you think about her story?
I was looking forward to hearing what happened with Donald.
Okay.
So I guess it had my attention.
Okay, good. All right. Did it make you feel something? Did it paint a clear picture?
About Donald, the guy with a bike who doesn't know his IPs. Kind of was getting a picture of Donald's situation, but again, we never know what happened to Donald, so.
Okay, all right, great. Any other feedback for Grace? Okay, All right. Thank you, Grace, for sharing. Thank you. You didn't finish, but I also wanted to hear, but because of the time, we'll have to wrap up soon. So that's why I cut you short. But thank you for sharing. Dr. Abby,
Sorry, I got distracted. I got distracted by my little girl, so I didn't follow the last part. Apologies for that.
Okay. All right. Then maybe we'll move on. We'll move on to Andrew. So you have 1 minute to share your mission moment story. And your time starts now.
Okay, so Luther is a young man, about 28 years old, and a graduate of the University of Ghana, and still pursuing an MPhil in agricultural science at the University of Ghana. Now, doing his research, he stumbled upon a challenge with fish farmers in Ghana. They were having a challenge with high prices of soya meal, so they couldn't buy enough soya meal to feed their fishes. So that means some had to close down, and the rest had to stagnate on growth. So he chanced upon a solution for this challenge, which was feeding the fishes with black soldier fly larvae, which is insects basically. And the great thing about these insects is they feed on animal and food waste. Yeah. So wow. So he's
Okay. Sorry about that, but time is up. Time is up. But feedback for Andrew. Sorry for cutting you, Andrew, but you were getting there. Yeah. Any feedback for Andrew? Did the historic cause you to feel something? Did it create a clear picture?
I think I won't be the best person to give feedback because he shared a story with me in the breakout room. So
okay. Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, I was just saying, I love the story. All these stories seem well thought out. I'm wondering if it was thought about weeks before. Everyone really did it literally in the minute we've been having this session.
Yeah.
It looks like we're reading storybooks over here today.
Okay, so this is a story of a business in incubation. So I know the business. Well, yeah.
Oh, great. Thanks for sharing, Andrew. That was great. Okay, so Brian, let's hear from you.
Each time I started with no story. Okay, there was a guy called Brian who was in a DT session and he had to tell a story. He didn't have much to think of, but he thought of his business, a business that he started because as he owned a car, he realized he had so many difficulties and wanted to build a modern garage that could solve these difficulties for other vehicle owners who didn't know what to do. And he also thought it could make some good money. But when he started the journey, he noticed that what he thought was a problem for him was worse for people on the other side, mechanics. More importantly, mechanics who migrated from rural areas and who had to sleep on the floors of garages while trying to make a living. And so he decided not just to build a business for profit, but to build a business for impact so he can create better conditions for these people and do more than just fix cars. I'm done.
Oh, all right, good. You had 10 seconds more. All right, great. Feedback for Brian. Did Brian's story make you feel something? Did it paint a clear picture?
No one should be too harsh. This is all. Allow me.
Yeah. Yes, Grace.
I honestly think we needed like 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Because he rattled too much and I couldn't really pick a lot from what he said. Yeah. I still think we need 30 seconds to finish our stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. So my time is up. But I'm hoping that you got something from this session, and let's just go out and tell our mission moment stories or create mission moment stories that make people feel something, so they can make a decision with whatever they hear with the story that you create. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was just saying this was a really fun session today and also very interactive. And, you know, for even those of us who think we tell stories, just having a chance to look at how stories impact others and what some of the core principles are to make impact was really refreshing. So yeah, really enjoyed the session and actually learned a few new things to tell more impactful stories. And it was also very lovely to hear the different stories, which I still remember, about the guy with the bamboo bikes and the guy who's buys. So, yeah.
Great. Thanks. Prof says he has a question. I have a question as well. Yes, Prof, please go ahead.
Yeah, Philip, always a pleasure to hear you give a session, and especially on storytelling. I think my first experience was doing the UNICEF
Right.
Unlimited program. This was what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
It's always such an awesome delivery. So thank you for that. I when I saw Mission Moment, because of the work you do, I immediately thought Christian mission. Had no idea mission was more of a general sort of reference. So I might have missed it at the beginning, but why the word mission moment?
All right. So thank you, Prof. So mission moment, because there's that part in the story that creates something that makes people feel sad. So there's a mission for the story that you are telling. So it's not just a story that you are telling, but it's a story that is stirring up an emotional response. So that's why it's mission moment. So I'm sorry that you missed, because of the work I do. Yes, Christian mission, but this one I was playing on the word on what is in your story that creates a mission to solicit an emotional response, or that aha part in your story that makes a difference and impacts or creates that emotional response from your audience. So that's why the word mission moment in the story. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments, or those of you who have been telling stories, please, if you have maybe something to share as well, I would love to hear maybe some tips, maybe one or two, and then we can wrap up if there's any other question or comments. Anyone wants to share? If not, I'm done. So we don't keep us here for long. Yeah.
Philip, if I may, I think I learned a long time ago that there was a formula for telling jokes. And that it basically is, you tell a story and to a point, and then you drop it, right? So everybody has an expectation of something that's going to happen next, and then you share something completely different from what everybody's expecting. And that's where the laughter comes in, right?
Wow.
So it becomes funny because the person does not expect to hear that what you just said, and it's also the reason why sometimes people laugh at stories not because it's funny, but it's because it's unexpected. So some of the laughter is not happy laughter, it's just very awkward laughter. So I'm just wondering what your take is on that. This idea that there's a formula for storytelling, or there's a formula for hitting your mission moment. I don't know.
Interesting. For me, this is my take. I might be wrong, but I'm thinking there's no formula. It's just how you're creative about it, with the stories. Some people tell jokes and it's about themselves. They laugh about themselves, and people laugh because they are laughing about themselves. And some people also tell jokes like what you said, like it's awkward. It's not funny, but it's the way they created it or how they said it made people laugh. So I don't think there's a kind of formula, but it's how you are creative about it, how you bring things together to connect with your audience. And the key thing is empathizing with your audience. So knowing the audience you are going to speak with, knowing who these audience are, and knowing the mission moment to punch, so you can get that emotional response from them. So that's what I would say to that. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Prof. But that's really exciting to hear. Thanks, Prof, for sharing that. Yeah. Any other person? If not, Matthew, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for this, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Philip. I mean, and thanks, Prof, for the question about clarifying the idea of missions. I also had that perception that it was something related to Christian missions and all that. And it's been a great session. I think the art of storytelling holds that power to inspire people and connect audiences deeply. And if we integrate the principles of design thinking into it, we are on a path to making them more impactful and then resonate more with people. I think today's session was really valuable. It gave us the platform to learn and then harness design thinking and storytelling. And Judah mentioned a lot of things. And one thing I picked was that the story should not have an ending. And that means that you have to leave the opportunity for your audience to end the story and for them to complete the story by making a decision. I think we have the tools and the knowledge to craft compelling stories to inspire people and inspire generosity and engagement in whatever we do. And it's been a great session, and I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. And we hope to have you guys join us again in our next week's out. Thank you all, and have a good evening.
Thank you.